Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar of Mobilize Your City in this new format called Expert Voices. I think we're going to start on time because we won't have much time. And then just for everybody to know, this is the new format that we're testing in the Mobilize Your City Secretariat. So we would really appreciate your feedback after the session is completed. The idea is that we keep it fresh and informal, and that we can also learn in this conversation that today we're going to have with Melissa Gómez, our guest expert today. She's the transport policy officer at the German Cyclist Association ADFC, and she's also Colombian like me. And it's funny that for the first time we're doing this expert voices format, and then Melissa lost her own voice, or in the way of losing it, but we're still trying to deliver the session for you to see what she's doing in her job. So thank you, Melissa, for being here. I hope you enjoyed the session, and thank you very much for supporting this uh, tests and like for being the guinea pig of our experts. Welcome. Um, and then I will, so for everybody just to know, this is going to be more like an interview. I invite you to send your questions on the chat. We did receive a couple of questions in advance when you register in the registration form. We have included them in the outline that we kind of prepared, and we will try to get all the answers, all the questions answered as much as we can. So welcome, Melissa. Thank you for being here. And if we start simple and very informal, what is exciting about your job these days?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for the invitation, and I'm really sorry that my voice is so damaged. I'm going to give my best so it's easy to understand. Very glad to be here, anyways. And that's a very good question because I think we are living very exciting times. Um, if I look at the cities where I used to live 10 years ago, there has been a lot of development going on. I have this feeling that we are living a momentum right now. There are things that became more obvious, and then we have to fight a little bit less than we used to. And I mean, I think the fact that there are some even so innovative urban planning concepts that became mainstream with like the super blocks or the 15-minute city, that it doesn't have to be only the technical people who know about them. I think the fact that there are even conspiracy theories against the
Mhm.
15-minute city, that says a lot about it, right? So I think there are great times.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And then let's go to the second question, because I see that you are very passionate about this topic, cycling. I forgot to mention at the beginning that this session was about cycling and cycling infrastructure and the experience of Germany. So how did you end up in the transport world? And was it something random that arrived in your life, or is it just the fact that you're Colombian and Colombia export transport planners?
I think it's a bit of both. Like
Mm.
I happened to experience the urban transformation in Bogota at the beginning of the 2000s. That it was, yeah, included a lot of cycling, but also the formalization of urban transport systems, no, right? The
Mm.
implementation of the first BRT system in a big city, and how that really changed people's life and the impact it had in people's life, and also the improvement of public space. And I just saw how much impact it had in people's life, and I decided, okay, that's what I want to, that's what I want to do. So I decided, I studied political science and urban, and then I did a master's in urban planning. And it was in my first master's in urban planning in Barcelona, who actually, at the university, they gave me a bike to be able to use it during the whole academic year, right? They lent me a bike for the whole year. And because Barcelona, as many of European cities, is a city of very short trips distances, so I
Mhm.
started commuting by bike, and my view just went absolutely nuts. I thought, okay, that's how you experience the city in a different way, like not really as a citizen, but also a student from urban planning. It was like, okay, that's why you can that's the impact it could have. That's can you experience the city in a different way. So I became absolutely religious about it. So saying that is what I really want to do. I want to be able to give people the opportunity to try this out. If it's not for you, it's not for you. It's okay. But you should have the right to be able to try it out and say if you like whether you like it or not, right? And it was a very
Mhm.
different experience because after Paris, um, yeah, actually that was Paris in the middle. No, after Barcelona, I moved to London, and I was
Okay.
working for the London cycling campaign, and it was a huge different experience because I arrived the first day of work. It was raining, and my colleague said like, "Okay, let's see your bike," and I was like, "Oh no, I didn't take it. It was raining." And everybody
Okay.
told me, "Okay, if you don't cycle in London when it rains, you basically never cycle. So you actually need to learn to cycle under the rain." And that's what I became a whole season. An all-season cyclist and an advocate, right? Like from the technical
Mhm.
perspective, yeah, I want to make possible that cycling is easy in cities, but also like privately and individually, I'm always telling the wonders of cycling.
Good, and that's why you're kind of an activist, I can see.
Well, yeah,
Um,
both.
from just to clarify, were you an urban cyclist when you were living in Bogota or not?
No, I didn't. I wasn't. I mean, we all have kind of relationship with the bicycle in Bogota because of Ciclovia, the open streets, Sundays. So
Mm-hmm.
let's say that I was used to do it, maybe not in traffic. And
Okay.
I did 3 semesters of political science in Bogota, and I used to commute once a week by bike,
Mm-hmm.
but
Okay.
it was once in one direction and then the next week in the other direction because
Okay.
I was living very far away from university. It was a really long way. And
Okay.
sometimes you have like class at 7 in the morning, so I didn't experience it. But afterwards, like I'm really glad how democratized the
Mm-hmm.
cycling experience in Bogota became, right?
Okay, good. Then you're gonna tell us how you fell in love of cycling here in Europe, and then we can learn for the Latin American and maybe also African cities to enhance this experience. So, with that said, let's jump into the topic. So the first question that I'm gonna ask is about the big criticism against cycling, and is cycling. When I imagine a cyclist is a young person, probably a guy, shaped in well shape. How do you combat this to make it very inclusive and for everyone, like to really try to combat this ableism that might be linked to cycling in the city?
Yeah, that's really interesting because that's what you described. Basically, it was these males, right? The middle-aged men
Mhm.
in lycra. And if you think about it, even in Germany, like some years ago, it was all still very male dominated. Like in most of countries, even though in Germany there's not a huge difference between the amount of women who cycle and men who cycle, in most of the countries there's a huge difference, right, between the amount of women who cycle and the amount of men. And also if you go and look at it and the old people and kids and everything. So what you really need to do to build inclusive cities in general. Like I'm really not talking about cycling, I'm really not talking about even infrastructure, but also in general, you need to take into account the needs of all the peoples, of all the users and citizens, which in my use might sound obvious to you, but it's
Mhm.
not. Like I am a member of many expert groups from urban planners, transport planners, and it doesn't come very often that we sit down and we say, who are we planning this city for? Who is
Mhm.
going to use this infrastructure? It's something that I experience as a city planner, for example, when you plan a park or like a green area, right? Like it needs to be safe. It only needs to be safe, but it needs to feel safe. Because are people going to enjoy spending time in this park? Are they going to like it? Are they going to appropriate themselves of this park? Well,
Mhm.
this in transport planning is unfortunately not yet like the standard, right? It's like there are in so many places where it's only taken into account the statistics, like,
Mhm.
or maybe, yeah, the scientific literature who says which type of infrastructure is better, but it's not taking into account how people feel about this infrastructure. Like, I'm sure you know a lot of people who would love to cycle but don't dare.
Mm-hmm.
I know many. And so you're basically denying the right to the city of these people. And
Mm-hmm.
it happens also with kids. Why kids don't go autonomous in the short way to the school, to the kindergarten? Why are we telling our kids you cannot be independent only because you're not taking into account their needs? Because it everything can be fixed with planning, right? We plan for what we want to have. So if we
Mm-hmm.
plan for cars and we plan for parking in urban spaces, that's what we're going to get. If we plan, like for example, also in the Netherlands, which is a great example for like all kinds of people to move around, that's where you're going to get. In the Netherlands, you even see people commuting from one city to the next one in a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
That is some unthinkable in so many cities. So it really opens the door, like inclusive infrastructure opens the door to everyone. A city that works for the child, it works for everyone else. And that's what we didn't do since we started planning the city, the autocentric city in the second half of the last century. And if you ask me how this should look like, well, very different. If of course it depends on the place. It of course depends on if it's a main street or not, like
Mm-hmm.
how many lanes, the amount of traffic, the speed limit, like all that you need to take into account to create a very um, um, meaningful and complete cycling network in which everybody feels safe, right? So I think that happens when more people come to the planning table, like not only the engineers, male engineers who were
Mm-hmm.
dominating the scene, but also when you include like women and you started to understand this as an interdisciplinary matter because engineers had just not the whole picture. And it's very ambitious to say that I can do it on their own. So we all win. It's a win-win for everybody.
Okay, wow, Melissa, thank you. Can I ask you how what an average street should have in order to meet these needs that different kinds of people have? Imagine a road not very transited, not very wide. Maybe you could also use the background on your that you have to explain us what is it that the street needs to be more inclusive also for people, for the elderly, for the children, for women. What is it that we need to include in practical terms?
Word in practical terms that it would involve very surely a distribution of space,
Mm-hmm.
right? It is really unfair the way that urban space is distributed right now. Like, not only because I like cycling, it's because a motorized traffic is actually just not the most efficient way to move 60 kilos of humanity or 80 kilos of humanity, right? So you need to prioritize and even to make easier to people who actually need to commute by car. So and when we do this road diet of this the redistribution of space, if you have a main street, you need to have separation. Then I'm never going to be tired of saying it. It's not
Mm-hmm.
negotiable. It's not negotiable. If you have a main street with a lot of traffic with high speeds, you need you need a separation because otherwise not everybody's gonna dare to ride along. Like if you go to more like side streets, residential streets, secondary streets that complement that main network of separated um, bicycle infrastructure, then you have now actually only comes the term in German that it's pacifying traffic areas,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you have the cycling streets, you have the 30 kilometers per hour zones, and or when you prioritize actually cycling and walking, you can use modal filters to
Mm-hmm.
avoid motorized traffic in certain access, and so you can create it very meaningful. Something that is also very important and it's also forgotten, it's that the intersection sometimes it's not really taken into account, or it's not perceived as being most important. And in Germany, most of the fatal accidents happened or crashes actually happen at intersections. So it's this really main point where we need to work on. And if I look at the experience of the Netherlands, for example, it's like you say, um, when you have separated infrastructure on the street, why would you leave it unprotected on the intersection? That's what you needed the
Mhm.
most.
Mhm.
So, um, so that's why I say you need to work out on different solutions to either separate the traffic modes also at the intersection, or make it by design possible for cars to slow down, or actually make them to slow down. So the way that they find each other, that's going to be time for negotiating. Like
Mhm.
if someone is going to respect who needs to, it has to go first or not, right? So that is very general because it also depends on every case, but it needs to be continuous. It needs to
Mhm.
be it doesn't only need to be safe but feel safe, and it needs to be comfortable also for every users. Right now we have a different kind of uses like cargo bikes, and there are whole
Mhm.
families who cycle. Like for example here you also see in Latin America, precisely not in a cargo bike, but there are like many members of the family like cycling in one kind of tailored bicycle. So we also really need to make place for these people.
So what I hear is we really need to plan in a way that our also ourselves would feel safe in the street. Like I don't want to be next to a car that is very quick, or I just want to be safe when I'm gonna cross a road. And then this leads us also that maybe it's not only planned and infrastructure for active modes, but also in relation to the other vehicles that are in the streets. Also reduce speed for cars, for example. And if this is not a cycling intervention, but then that it has an impact on the way people feel more safe when they're gonna cycle. Um, if I'm right, and I see you nodding, so then maybe I'm going to ask the next question that is related to your listing the things that need to be done also in the for the infrastructure for the physical streets to be more safe and that people have the chance to take their bikes and move around the city in this transport mode. What are the policies that Germany is pushing to make this happen, or at the EU level, what are the regulations that are in place, or also from the activist point of view, what are the measures that have been these groups advocating for in order to pursue this objective of making the streets safer for cycling?
Well, it's very important that you mention now the regulation part because that is in Germany right now at the center of the debate. We had recently a reform of the traffic law that it was long due. Basically, you can imagine this. The pandemic arrived, and there were some districts in Berlin who decided to use this window of opportunity to implement some bicycle infrastructure with like interim materials, right? Like these pop-up bike lanes, let's say. And they said, okay, people are trying to avoid public transport. People need, we wanted to make it sure for everybody. So we are going to do this right now, right easy, very fast. They actually said, saw it for first time from Bogota. We did it actually because Bogota does it every Sunday. So they Bogota just did it automatically, and someone in Berlin saw it and said like, "Oh, look what are they doing? Of course that works." Like when Twitter was a good place, and they got inspired and they implement that here. And after some time, they even have to remove some, and there were some places where they had to remove it because according to the German traffic law, you could only implement bicycle infrastructure if there's proof that there's like a lot of people dying. That is very unsafe. And you're
Oh,
like, yeah,
wow.
okay, but that's actually nobody cycling there because it's very scary. So of course, if nobody cycling, there's like almost no people dying. You had to justify it with like numbers of accidents or crashes. It was really, and you can say, no, this is actually a very important street, and I want to make it like a good connection for the bicycle network. And they were like, no, that's not enough. Is people dying here or not? Like I'm telling it very in a very formal way. Of course, it wasn't like that the argument, but it really at the end of the day is what it happened. So
Mhm.
we all started to advocating, like not only cycling advocacy, of course, but like almost everyone who had to do with sustainability in German, like we need to reform this. We need to be able to implement uh, the speed limits of 30 km per hour if the city wants it. And they created, there was even a network of cities who were like pleading the ministerium, please, we would like to make um, this tempo limit, 30 kilometers per hour, the standard in our city. We
Mhm.
just want to do it, but we don't have the competency. It was the ministry who was saying, no, actually, I know very little about you, but I think I don't agree that you want to implement these measures, right? So it was crazy. There was a lot of political will to implement progressive measures, and the traffic code were just blocking it. So that was a huge. There were also a lot of things that improved with this new regulation, but that's one of the main things that we talk about it right now in Germany. It's very recent, actually.
Okay, thank you. And then I hear again, and to use a cycling reference, I think what you're mentioning is like it's needed this tandem approach of not only making cycling more attractive, but also making it more difficult for cars. And you
Yeah,
need interinstitutional governance and coordination to do this because it's not only one single entity that will accomplish this objective, but it's in coordination with the other powers, which makes it also much more difficult.
absolutely. And also because honestly, even if I work at the German Cyclist Association, we always say it's not about the bicycle.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we like bicycles, they are nice, but it's really not about the bicycle. It's about the city, it's about what kind of city we want to live in. And so the bicycle is a tool for a lot of things. Like, it solves so many, like, urban issues from today, right? From congestion, for air pollution, for noise, for lack of space, for safety, for security, for health, for sports, for
Mhm.
amusement. It just really have so many benefits that you say that is also a tool. But if you talk about it, what is the cross space between transport and public space, for example?
Mhm.
Also, right, we brought like many years ago the concept of the super blocks
Mhm.
to Germany and tried to say, look, it could work here as well. And if you think about it, like the super blocks is not even like a transport concept. It's actually rather a public space concept,
Mhm.
right? Because Barcelona was built in a way that it was not planned, and they
Mhm.
left it out the city without green areas and without any public space. So they had to tackle that issue with this complex element that the super block is. But it was just an idea, right? Like it's if you mix all these things and all the stakeholders and all these actors and you put all that together, it's like, oh look, that's actually the livable city we all want.
Mhm. Thank you. And then that you mentioned this, that it's not only like a mobility issue, then I think I'll jump to the last question because we're running out of time. But I think this is gonna be the big fine end for our session, and it's especially for Latin American and African cities. What do you think? What lessons can we learn from the experience in Germany, especially considering that in Latin America and Africa, the key question is how we attract new users, how we convince people to cycle around the city in a constant manner,
Mm.
no? What is it? What's the secret?
Yeah, look. Well, okay, secrets that are normal secret. It really works something different, but of course you can get inspired from other cities and on what others have done. And I think that, I mean, everybody has to start fighting like the status quo bias, right?
Mm,
You have it like way more implemented in Latin American or African countries because there are way less tradition than in Europe, cycling tradition, let's say. Not because here it's different, it's because here they started already some years ago. So they started exactly for the same place. Like there are so many cities in the global south that started, but they already made a lot of way and they show us a bit. like what can we do, or how can we accelerate this process. So something that I found really useful to tackle this status quo bias, for example, are the living labs, or the pilot projects, or
Mm-hmm.
trying out something, even if it's as a demonstration on a Sunday, or only for a few days. Just show people how this place could look like, right? Like how
Mm-hmm.
how can you enjoy this place if it's not like this just for cars? Because in our cities in Latin America and Africa, it's the minority of people moving around by cars. So there's no sense. It makes no sense that most of the space is reserved for them, and that this quote the status quo gets along when it's the majority of the population who is not uh, being able to enjoy, right? So I would also say that you need to be careful about the narrative, and that comes
Mm-hmm.
a little bit when it's come. Yes, like something that I learned from all these years working in different places. It's like you don't talk about traffic and mobility and cycle lanes, and not everybody needs to understand this. It's very polarized now. um, you actually need to ask people what do they want, what do they wish for, and actually show them how, what are the tools to reach this, right? And something that I think it's very meaningful from the case, for example, from Germany, that I would suggest everyone, even if it's a long way, it's the level of professionalism from the political work that it's being done here, like the lobby work that I do. And it's not because I work here. I was very impressed when I arrived to the ADFC, and I thought, oh my God, is this monster organization have been finding out in the last 40 years, basically, how they can effectively influence public policies that benefit cycling. That is very different to do activism. I also have a great story about activism in Germany, because most of what is happening in Germany right now also started um, bottom up, with like some cycling referendums. In everybody, if everybody who's looking and wants to learn more about it, they can write me, and I'm happy to share some literature about it, because it's really fascinating examples. Like, right, this activism, this bicycle referendum that started in Berlin, made way to the first mobility law in Germany, and then replicated in many cities and regions in Germany. So it really created like this really wave effect. And but from the more political side also, it's
Mm-hmm.
really try to organize in a different way, try to find out to to reach people and to tell them. We were collecting signatures of the street and actually telling people what we were looking for, and everybody was like, oh, even if they were not cyclists, like, oh yeah, that sounds actually really well, so I'm gonna sign. And we collected more than 3 times the signatures that we needed to.
Mm-hmm.
So so the potential is there. You really need to unlock it, and then we can another time talk about political will and finances and
Yeah,
legal frameworks and all that. It's like that back there, but there's a lot you can start with.
it's a long topic. It's a broad topic. I hope we
It's a
will have more sessions on this. And thank you for that answer. I will try to sum it up from what I heard. So breaking the status quo in a city is something we need to do to start. And then this can be done by demonstration projects, trying things, showing people what it looks like or how it can potentially look like, and then taking care of communications and the narrative that you put the like around the policy, and then also having professional lobbyists that can also be activists, but in the right manner, they can actually influence policy.
right.
This is what I got from you. Okay, good. I did a good job summarizing the ideas. Last question. How do you think, in very shortly, 30 seconds, what do you think this conversation is going to change if we had it in 5 years from now?
When I'm really hoping that activism, for example, in the global south is more the structure, or this political world is more a structure that we created way more channels of exchange. I really need, I really think that it's absolutely necessary, not because we can do and copy paste, but we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. As I said, we learn here from the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, they learn from other countries. Like we really try to exchange what it worked, what we didn't do, what it could do. So in the future, I'm pretty sure that in 5 years also decision makers are going to see how it went in other cities who with majors who were really bold and implemented
Mhm.
a lot, and they also like gained a lot of political capital, and they want to go to get that golden medal, and gonna do it as well.
Great. Let's see politicians cycling. I think that's a good future.
Yeah.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, everyone, for attending. We run out of time. We would really appreciate if you fill the feedback form so we can enhance this format, and then also invite you to sign up for the next sessions that will happen in a couple of weeks. Melissa, I will just have three more questions that I hope will be easy to answer. Only yes or no, and there only yes or no. Huh? Are you ready to close the
Yes.
webinar? Promoting electric bicycles in cities, yes or no?
Yes.
Making helmets mandatory when cycling?
No.
And do we allow e-scooters in cycling lanes?
In wide enough cycle lanes, yes.
Okay. In that one, you cheated a bit, but I take it. Perfect. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody else. We will send a follow up email with the information about the webinar. Thank you for making this session great, Melissa.
Yeah, thank you
And
for
then
inviting me.
if you have further questions for the public, I think we sent your LinkedIn profile,
Yes.
so they will reach out and let us know what you think.
Yes,
Thank you
thank you
very
very
much.
much. I hope you next time you also invite me without this voice, with a better voice.
Hopefully you'll have a voice. It was good.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
See you next time. Bye.
See you.